Welcome back, everybody, for episode 17. I can't believe we have done 17 episodes of this podcast, The Shit Show. It's live, so there's lots of interruptions. I try to shut the hell up, but we all know I digress like a motherfucker, so it's hard not to. And this week, we have a special guest, another content creator by the name of Pierre, and he controls the YouTube channel of the Moto Fam and TikTok. He's got some really good content out there. So, Pierre, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I'm super excited about what we're about to get into in this podcast.
Heck yeah. And then, as always, we've got the one and only, the mad scientist, Coach Robb Beams, who I'm doing his Ironman program right now, and I feel my body struggling a little bit, but that's because of lack of sleep. We talked before this, or I need to talk to him after this about it, but that's my own doing. And honestly, I'm in love with it. It's helping me out a bunch. And how you doing, Coach?
Hey, we're doing good. Thanks again for allowing us to be a part of this show every week. People have no idea how much work you really do put into it. As much as we bust your balls, we really do appreciate it. And Pierre, it's great to have you, man. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Oh, we all know I don't work at all. And then that brings us to the segue of Cooksey.
What up,
and
Johnny?
That's the introduction I have.
Such an asshole. Oh, I do love it. So no, and I do appreciate it, Johnny. You bust your ass on the show, putting it together, getting all the guests. It is a pain in the ass to do live shows. Like I was going to do a live one this week, with an interview, and it's hard to coordinate with people, and I appreciate you doing it. So
yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on board, because this show would not be the same without you. But in overview, what we want to talk about,
it would be better without me.
Honestly, I don't think it would be better without you. I talk enough, so it's nice to have other people talk.
Somebody's got to keep you in check, because it is what it is. Like, but your people, I'll tell you what, your people come strong though. When I come at you, they're like, don't mess with Johnny. Like they got your back. So
dude, that's why I want to bring him to the races with me, because, you can have that like small figure, and there's a saying, right? It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. But I'm small, but if I have an army behind me, man, I could say some shit and get away with it. That's the whole thing with the Deegans and everything. When you say something somewhat that may be true, may not be true, when you have a decent fan base, a community, they get behind them, which is awesome. And that's all we want to do here, is we just want to build the sport up, and we're a little bit unfiltered. That's the thing. Sometimes we get in trouble for it being on the sense of negative, but I don't feel like we're that negative. We just want to call a spade and see if there's any way we can get a conversation started.
It's not that we're negative, Johnny. It's just, we don't look the other way when we see the negative. We call it out. And that's what people sometimes just they're so oblivious to it and it's almost become a culture thing where you can't point out a negative or you're an asshole. Well, no, that actually, if it happened, I'm going to talk about it, period. And if they want to kick my ass at the races, it won't be the first time. So.
And on top of that, I mean, there has to be space for assholes sometimes, right? What is this world coming to if you can't be an ass from time to time, whether you're right or wrong?
Yep.
Yes. Well, and sometimes you're wrong. Like, trust me, everything I said has not been right, but that's what we do. We talk. That's how we learn. Make mistakes, you move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the cool thing, Cooksey, is you own up to whenever you are wrong about something, as opposed to try to blame it on something else. You come out and you own up for it, which is respectful in itself. And it's something that I admire about you. But I mean, I've said this before, that originality is undetected plagiarism, just like what Pierre was saying, as far as there is space for the bad guy, right? And some people would rather watch the bad guy than the good guy with a different narrative.
The perfect example. I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
No,
you can always cut off.
I told you in the prior that you got to cut me off here.
So the perfect example of this was, go back to the early 2000s between Brian Deegan and Travis Pastrana, right? That head to head of Travis Pastrana being like the all-American good boy, and Brian Deegan showing up to these freestyle motocross events as the bad guy with the spikes on his shoulder and the cutoff shorts and all that stuff. Without that, during that era, the sport of freestyle motocross and just moto in general, which reaped the benefits, that dichotomy, that angst between the two and the two sides that were pitted against each other, you were a Brian Deegan fan, a Metal Militia fan, or you were a Pastrana fan, that amped up the level. And like you said earlier in our conversation, it raised up our sport. You have to have one in the other to keep everything. Otherwise, every Marvel movie would be so boring, right? Or at least the good ones in the past, right? If you don't have the bad guy, if you don't have the antagonist, this sport turns into mush, just like a lot of the sports are nowadays, right? Everybody has to be at a certain level of righteousness, if you will, right? And if you deviate from that, you're ostracized, versus people being like, oh man, I don't like that point of view, but at least I have an enemy, or I have somebody that we can like all kind of rally around. And having that sporting back and forth, a positive person, a negative person, a good guy and a bad guy, is what is going to take every sport and every aspect, but especially our own, to the next level. All podcasts can't just sound the same. You know what I mean? All TikTokers, all content creators can't be just always putting out the same context and the same content. Otherwise, why are we doing this, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And one thing that I find very interesting is we all want the sport to grow. And I'm going to show my age here. Remember when ESPN became a novelty? Like, you had people that literally commentated on everything that happened over the weekend. And when you look at the people who were hosting ESPN, it wasn't always about just doting all over whatever the sport was at the time. Let's say it was football season or baseball season or basketball season. Like Chris said earlier, they called what they saw, good, bad, and different. They
Right.
bring 2 people, then they got to 3 people. Isn't it interesting that you would have a producer that says, okay, we started this show called ESPN Sports Center. We have somebody that's going to talk about what we saw. Then they brought 2 people in, and it was kind of, they bantered back and forth. And then what did they do? They went to an odd number of 3. So you have a good, bad, a bad cop, and then someone in the middle. Now what do you see? You see 5. You notice there's a pattern here of odd numbers.
Right.
So there's, to your point, if we want to elevate the sport, somebody has to be courageous enough. And I've never spoken to the owners of any of the NFL teams, but I don't think that they were ever disappointed. As Johnny always says, sometimes bad media is good media. Any
there's no
exposure.
such thing as bad press.
Thank you.
True.
So when you look at something like that, do you think the owner of these NFL teams or baseball or basketball teams, did they really care what ESPN Sports Center was saying, or were they just glad that they were being talked about? And I think that's, I'm not putting ourselves on par with the ESPN Sports Center, but
No, why not?
Yeah, there you go. There had to be that first time that somebody was going to go ahead and put something in place that says, hey, let's give some perspective on what we saw this weekend. And like you said, Pierre, not everybody agrees with it. And in today's day and age, of course, if somebody doesn't agree with you, then it means we need to get you to not be able to speak at all. Just go to 100% censorship. Michaela and I were just talking about this at lunch. Everybody knows on this show that I'm a staunch conservative, especially when it comes to fiscal conservatism. That's my biggest thing. However, I love sitting and talking with someone who vehemently thinks I'm an idiot, as long as it can be a conversation. When I was in massage therapy school, there was a gentleman there, he was gay, and he was like just this huge advocate for all these gay rights. And I honestly had never been around anybody who was gay. And I just simply said to him, his name was Kevin, I said, Kev, what is it that you guys don't have that you want? And then he went through 3 or 4 things that I honestly didn't know. I just assumed if you're a partner, right, you have the same health insurance and benefit. I didn't know they didn't have it. I didn't know they weren't eligible. But because he didn't call me a jerk and a homophobe and everything else, because I sincerely didn't understand what he was advocating for, at the course of it, after a couple hours of talking, I had a better insight into what he had to say. How do we lose that? I see here in the chat room, people are talking about freedom of speech.
lost coach's speech.
Oh yeah.
No, no, they
he was getting
censored him.
tense there for a second.
Yeah, they canceled him
Oh.
right there.
Oh, he's frozen. Frozen like right in the middle. You can't say
Demonetized,
that.
out, kicked.
Oh.
I swear I didn't kick him out. I didn't pause him or anything.
I
Oh.
was about to give a standing ovation. He had me on that one. That
Dude.
conversation.
Not that
Do
we're
not
trying to get
censor
into
on
politics, but okay, Rob, you're back. How,
Yep.
how did you want to finish that? You paused. Honestly, I don't even remember.
Like a
where
really,
paused.
you were, I can't remember where you're at, but like we're all hanging off your words and then you were stuck like this.
No, I think it
Yeah.
was the fact that he was talking about that he was being educated by the person he was talking to.
Yep.
Right.
Or like
That
censorship.
yes,
You know,
yes.
where did we lose the point where
we could have a conversation.
And not take
we
it
brought
personal.
up on this show how my OnlyFans has become such an incredible platform because they literally honor the idea of freedom of speech. If you don't like a content subject matter, then don't watch it. Don't go there. Versus that doesn't align itself with my political view, so I'm just going to censor it off. That's not freedom of speech. That's manipulation of the narrative. But isn't it interesting when we think about Twitter and these other platforms, and then you look at the sport that we all love, heaven forbid you see something that's not in alignment with the puppets, then what ends up happening? You get ostracized, or like Chris said, then you get accused of being negative.
Right.
So-
And go ahead. Okay. Well, one thing that's interesting in all of this, and I think it kind of goes for, is one of the things, and this isn't a toot my own horn moment. I'm trying to add to this is one of the biggest things is when I started to take content creation seriously, I promised myself I would never, ever delete comments. I would never be the person who turns off my comments. And I'm a fan, right? I'm a fan. I'm not somebody in the industry. I don't do track walks every race. I don't get to do all the amazing things that a lot of the people in our industry do. I am a fan. So I get things wrong all the time. And I get called out on it, and people will call me an idiot and, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're right. I'm a fan. But you are allowed to call me an idiot, and that's totally cool with me, because if I take offense to it, that's on me. Right? That's not on you. You in the broader scheme of things, you commenting and saying that, I don't know what I'm talking about is just putting money in my pocket, right? It's feeding the algorithm. It's allowing the algorithm to go, hey, there's some stickiness to this conversation. I'm going to show this video to somebody else, and hopefully they think I'm an idiot too and comment, because it's just more money in my pocket. So, for me, in that sense, it almost does a disservice to the person who is making content or whatever career they're in to not take that back. Because I'll tell you a story real quick. One of the most aha moments I ever had is early on in my content creation career. I put up a video, and there was something that was really wrong. I can't remember what it was. I might have said somebody's name wrong or gotten a fact wrong. And somebody called, oh no, I remember what it is. Here's what it is. I was doing a video with a lot of pop-ups, right? A lot of like meme pop-ups and stuff like that. And somebody literally commented, hey, the pop-ups are getting a little bit out of hand. Like, this is too much. It looks stupid. I'm going to unfollow because it's getting too campy for me. And I was like, you know what? Now that I'm looking at this video, this person is right. And I calmed that back. And it was a moment where I was like, you know what? Sometimes it's worth listening to the feedback you're getting, whether it's positive or negative. You can make an adjustment, and it might actually help. Now, if somebody calls me an asshole with no reasoning behind it, that's one thing. But if somebody gives me a specific, why can I not just say, okay, let me review what I'm doing and move forward from there?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love what you said right there about, and that's kind of the rule I have with my people. They're welcome to call me whatever they want. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm stupid, but tell me why. Don't tell me just I'm an idiot. If you just want to throw insults, I rarely, if ever, block somebody. But I have. If somebody repeatedly won't talk reasonably and they'll just call insults, it's probably Davey Coombs. So I just block them. So
And with that comment, Johnny's hair just cringed.
oh, Johnny's best friend.
No, I like Davey Coombs. Him and I get along, and we
You know,
talk.
hold on. Before we go further into this, I just got to remind people there was a time when Davey called me a friend and told me he would never, ever talk to Johnny credential Johnny or have anything to do with Johnny. And now, boy, the tide has turned, and it just it shows you he likes to have one friend in the group, and I love that you're it, and I don't have to be it. So thanks, Johnny.
Well, I feel like you need to give everybody a chance until I make rapport and have a reason to not trust somebody. You know, maybe that's just one of my moral values. Like I can have my guard up, but until there's a real true reason of somebody disrespecting me to have a reason to not give them respect, I don't feel like I need to have a bias to it. But I am aware of what has happened with the people on this panel before. So may it be, set myself up for something? Maybe
No,
maybe not.
It's not. I'm just busting your balls, Johnny. I actually really like that you talk to him. And I like that he's willing to talk to you. And there was a time I really wish, and I've reached out to him. Gosh, it was probably 3-4 months ago. I said, hey, listen, I just sent him a text that said, would you like to bury the hatchet and just find a common ground? But crickets. So it is what it is.
Yeah. And Cooksey, like I'm in a different way of it's funny how like I remember talking to Jace about this on the Gypsy podcast, where he told me what stuck with me is he was like, Johnny, if you get in a better place with motorcycles, I'm sure your content is going to change and reflect that. And truthfully, like us content creators, we're artists, right? It's creativity is what we're expressing. And
Totally.
If you look back at my older videos, yeah, they kind of were pretty negative, that I was highlighting that I had a microscope to what was wrong. And then I was really hard about showing that to the world. And that was just kind of how I felt inside, just like how an artist, some of his biggest hits, he's incredibly depressed, but the songs are amazing because people resonate with it. But my content is and what is cool about having a YouTube channel and just like Pierre and everything, TikTok, we get to control the narrative or how people want to perceive us. And I have been in a better place. So my stuff has changed to where I'm not as keen on just focusing on the negative. I want to see everything as a whole. And then if there's a way that we can make a difference or I can make a difference, I will jump in on it. But I don't know, that's a long-ended way of saying that we grow as individuals.
No, it's funny too, Johnny, you say that, because you can go back through my videos and, I've been through a divorce and some other stuff in the last few years. You can see when I'm having troubles, my videos get a little darker and then they go back and then they go back and forth. So it's crazy how you could probably pinpoint a lot of what's going on with this in our perspective by what's going on in our real lives.
And another interesting thing to throw in there, going like outside of our little circle here, is the same thing I honestly think applies to Justin Barcia. This season, he has talked about how important it was for him to call Jason Anderson and be like, hey man, I just want to race. I want to squash whatever we have going back and forth. You can do your thing. I'm going to just try and do my thing. And up until his injury, I mean, Barcia has been on a tear, dude. Like he has really changed and shifted his mindset. And you can even say the same thing about Chase Sexton openly saying, like, I had to change my mind. I had to get off of social media and stop listening to the talking heads saying, oh, it's all in his head. He's going to make a mistake in that final lap. That's just who he is. And the mindset of people can not only change their perspective in a sport like we see with them too, but it also can change the perspective of what we do as content creators putting out stuff, right? Certainly in the beginning of my career as a content creator, I was like, oh, I have to be the guy who points out all the stupid stuff that somebody says, or I disagree with this person. Now it's just, I'm a fan. Let me be a fan. Let me say, oh, this is super cool, or, oh, I find this interesting, or I don't really know how to feel about this. And whether it's positive or negative, that small mindset change can really change everything for someone. And so I guess to say, it's important that we all have that moment to reflect, not only as an athlete, but as a person who makes content or whatever career, that we have a time to go, am I doing too much of this one thing, whether it's negative, or can I pivot and do something else?
Absolutely.
Pierre, this is what I hate about social media in general, is because there's so much cyberbullying, and it comes back to psychology. Like, how we survived is we had to be a part of a group, and that's how we hunt and gather and just literally survive. The lone wolf dies while the pack survives, right?
Right.
And unfortunately, how the algorithms work right now is, in order to kind of be big, and I see this a lot with some of my crypto friends, is you have to shill a lot of just nonsense bullshit stuff that's retarded, because people will watch some poor guy make $1 million doing something, betting on black, rather than talking to a billionaire that tells you, hey, you can make your first $1 million in 10 years, and this is how to actually do it. People don't resonate with that stuff. They resonate with the shilling of negativity and something that is just pops out. And so I don't know how it would change so that people can give good advice and still grow their popularity. But then once you have a following, then you have a responsibility to no longer be shilling and kind of being disrespectful and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, in order to get the followers there, you got to kind of be an asshole and lie to people in a way. Like, do you guys get what I'm trying to say?
100%. It's that 80-20 rule. Until you build your business up big enough to where you can live off of the 20%, you have to deal with the other 80% initially, and you gotta have to put up with it. Johnny, like you're saying, kind of a little game of tennis. I'll say something, you don't like it, I'll banter back and forth with you. I got into a discussion with a social media guy, because if you look at me on Instagram, I think I have like 3,500 followers. This guy's like, well, you've got 21,000 on YouTube. Why don't you have the same on Instagram? And I said to him, I don't want 21,000 people on Instagram. And the reason why I say that is, if you look at my level of engagement, people that watch my videos, the amount of people that watch, as we say, pay, stay, and refer, my engagement is almost at 67% engagement of those 3,400 people. So if I'm able to provide some level of insight into health, wellness, and performance, and to your point, Johnny, I'm going to have somebody that will want to debate something, I have no problem having an adult conversation, but I'm not going to get into somebody, as you guys both have alluded to, they just get into name calling and character assassination. Because to your point, that's going back to talking to the millionaire. What's he going to say? Most people spend their time on things that don't yield long-term wealth. I mean, that's you. It doesn't matter what wealthy person you speak to. What do they always talk about? The value of time, the compounding effect of money, and the people. Johnny, I think you've said it on the show a couple times. You're only a byproduct of, was it 3 or the 5 people that are around you?
The 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah. So now you're back to the 80-20 rule in a social media environment. I think it's interesting when people boast that they've got 1 million followers. Well, how many people do they really have an engagement with? That to me, especially for someone like myself, I'm doing a video a day on YouTube, simply answering questions that have come in. And yeah, I might get 300 or 400 views on a video. I might get 50 until it becomes a pain point. Like I've shared with you guys before, I have a video on how to use a swim kickboard that has almost 1 million views that was produced 15 years ago. So once there's enough pain, somebody gets frustrated, wants to improve nutrition or strength or whatever, go to my YouTube channel, and guess what? There's playlists and you'll be able to find a solution. But it's that 80-20 rule, going back to the millionaire, that goes back to, where are we making the most inroad? We don't want a community that just agrees with everything we say. What we do want is an agreement that will allow each of us to have a voice your opinion, be willing to listen to somebody's counter, and vice versa. And now we've got a community that continues to grow every single week that we do this show.
Agreed.
Good point,
And somebody
Rob. Well,
somebody said that we were cyberbullying Deegan. They're probably pointing at me. I call bullshit on that. I never cyberbullied Deegan, other than saying, if you want to say cyberbullied Brian Deegan, but that's nothing I wouldn't say to his face.
Yeah, but
he's
look
an
at what
idiot.
Bobby says. Having an opinion about Deegan isn't cyberbullying, and he's exactly right. He nailed it.
And there's
Johnny,
a thousand opinions about, and the Deegans as a whole, right? You love them, you hate them, or maybe you like one of them, or, you know, all of them are doing their own things. So to have an opinion on the Deegans is like, it's such a broad spectrum. You can, you know, I grew up watching Brian Deegan, met him a couple times, but is the person I met the actual guy? I don't know. Maybe that was just his persona. Did I like him? Was he an asshole to me? Yeah. Like the first time I met him, yeah, he was, but he was also, you know, I don't know, probably 20 something at the time, and, you know, a really big name. And then you see somebody like Huxon, his youngest son, who is completely doing stuff differently, right? He has like a cooking channel on his YouTube, and he does a whole bunch of
I didn't
random
know.
stuff. Like to lump anybody into that direction and be like, I hate the Deegans. Well, why or why not? You know, that's totally an opinion you can have, but to lump them all together, like, let's have a conversation around that, or let's figure out why that is, and the reasons behind it. Because to be honest with you, I can say, hey, Brian Deegan wasn't the nicest guy when I first met him, but his son rips on a freaking dirt bike, right? Like, I can say both those things and they're both true. So yeah, it's
But Pierre, take it one step further. When you say Deegan was an asshole when you met him, and then you can elaborate why,
right.
said something disrespectful, was curt to you, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we go through any past champion, McGrath, Carmichael, Stewart, anybody, you know, there's going to be a dozen people out there that caught Ricky or James at the wrong time, and their opinion of Ricky is he's an ass. He was short. I only came to this race to get his autograph, and he wouldn't even make eye contact with me. As long, like when someone says they disagree with me, I'm like, cool. Why? What is it that you disagree with? Let's say it's nutrition or strength training or sports psychology, whatever it is. It goes back to, like you're saying, if you say you don't like somebody, you use the example of Deegans, please say why. Because here's the funny part. Do you think the Deegans give a flying flip about what we think about?
No.
I think they care. I think they care what I say, because I've heard from them. So
yeah,
all right.
But that's because you have a personal relationship with Deegan that none of us all have. You've had a personal interaction. And I think a lot of people, and I think Johnny brings this up quite often, social media has created this false sense of reality that because I follow someone on Instagram, I have an interpersonal relationship with them. That's so weird. Somebody thinks they know you because they engage on Instagram or YouTube. They think they know you.
Twitter's the worst too. People think that they're your best buddies because Steve Mathis or some random ass dude was like, hey, whatever at you, whether it was positive or negative, because there's and now all of a sudden, me and this guy talk all the time. Well, no, you don't. He could care less about you. He just tweeted at you, you know?
And I think there's the difference. I appreciate anyone that follows me, subscribes. I appreciate anybody that's willing to give the things I suggest an opportunity. You know, as I always say, I just can't demand your trust. I can't demand your respect. I have to earn that. And I think that's where social media, there's no buffer. Chris has a interpersonal relationship with Deegan, good, bad, you know, racing incidents and all that goes with it. But how can somebody as a third person say that Chris's opinion of somebody based on his interpersonal experience, how can you say that Chris is right or wrong? He's entitled to his opinion based on his personal interaction. You got to stop there.
Yeah, very true.
You know?
Hey, switching it a little differently to interpersonal. I hear these guys, you know, the talking heads, the same ones we always refer to, saying the sport is what it is. It won't grow. It's kind of tapped out and we just need to deal with it. These same people make the worst decisions. And I'm hearing rumors they're going to take the very best play-by-play guy, who is Daniel Blair right now, and bump him. And I'm just like, why? Why would they ever do that? Like, it's disgusting to me.
I heard that too. Yeah.
Who are they replacing him with?
Lee Diffie full-time, because apparently he has a personal relationship with someone at NBC.
Yeah, but that's no different than when Ralph was in there. That's all we kept hearing. Everybody who watches the show.
I didn't mind Ralph Shaheen. I thought he did a decent job with filling the noise, and then you'd have some people that actually knew what they were talking about with Moto. I thought it was good. Lee Duffy, Daniel Blair would be a thousand times better.
I even like Todd Harris, but not one of them
I love
knows the
Todd Harris.
sport.
I think
but
he's the best fill-in
other than
guy there.
Daniel. I'm sorry, Daniel's the best in my opinion
Well,
because he's
I
actually a
mean,
motorcycle guy.
yeah, motorcycle knowledge guy, as far as he catches up on stuff analytically that I feel like a lot of my channel is based upon. He is the guy that would do the same thing on the live broadcast, showing, hey, look at this rut, da 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 da. But as far as if you talk between like Ralph Shaheen,
I've never heard him say
Duffy,
da 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 da.
da 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 da. This goes with this channel. Da 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 da.
No, that's
Anyway.
not how you did it. You went da 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 na 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 na.
It was a better fill-in word than you see, you calling me on my shit here. Todd
Sorry,
Harris, I
Johnny.
thought he was the best NBC sportscaster of them all.
Todd Harris is the best, has been the best, and will continue to be the best, and would be the perfect complement for Daniel Blair. Daniel Blair is that guy that gives that minute detail. Todd Harris has got the experience with the X Games, and he can raise his voice and lower his voice and keeps everybody engaged. He doesn't misname a rider. He doesn't misname a bike. He doesn't talk about Tomac's mechanic got a bunch of birds out of his garage the way that Ralph used to talk about. That's what, and I don't understand this. What is the NBC gurus thinking? And we talked about this before. How much work do you have to go through to find Supercross on television on a Saturday night? You got to be a Peacock member. You've got to be on at the exact same time. And yet Peacock continues to say, well, we've got to elaborate on the green bike as a Kawasaki, and it has 249 cc's, and the clutch is on the left side of the bike. Like, are they seriously thinking that that's the people? Is it even 1/2% of the people watching that doesn't know what bike color is a brand?
Honestly, but
Coach,
that's how
you're making my point to what, like, this is when they say the sport won't grow, this is why. When I tune into football, they're not telling me the rules every time. If I want to know the rules, I have enough things in front of me that I can find out the rules. This is for the diehard. This is the guy that wants to know why the quarterback threw to the second receiver, not the first receiver. It has not, we got to go to that next level. They will never get past this red Honda, yellow, it's just stupid. So
honestly, I disagree. Go for it, Pierre.
No, Johnny, you go first.
I disagree with both of you guys because
of course you do.
Yeah.
Is Davey in your ear? Sorry. Davey, you got an earpiece to Davey?
That stung a little bit, but
no, I'm kidding. Johnny,
when it comes to market share, people that know about motorcycles, it's the whole two-stroke, getting stuck on two-stroke when the innovation is moving on to something else. And the general population don't know anything about, like my wife, even though I felt like I was a little superstar that had some local championships and see the it's etc. ... When she first came to a national with me, she was like, holy crap, I didn't even know that this was a professional thing, right? But how do you pinpoint and get into the other demographic of people? And
let me interject there, Johnny. She had you to explain it, right? Everybody has somebody. They don't need the announcers to do that. They don't. That's my point. It's overkill. It's dumbing it down to the smart people.
So I'm going to jump in here and go like a completely different way with this real quick. So in my mind, sure, is there an aspect of like, hey, I'm hearing the same stuff from the same people. I don't need to know about the way this works. I am a diehard fan. I've been watching since I was 10, right? I don't want to hear all this goofy stuff. And then you have the other side where there's a part of me that's very like, look, I want this sport to grow. And me being a technical person, I want to know the nuts and bolts. Like, I think F1 is a perfect example. F1 has like 5 different shows going on, right? They have a pre-race show that's very in depth, but then they also have like a funny side show going on. I don't know why the AMA failed, whoever, or NBC or Peacock or whoever has their hold on our media. Why can't you, with so many platforms like YouTube, streaming services, TikTok does streaming, Facebook does streaming, they all do something. Why are we only allowed to watch on that one media space? Why, as a company and as a group who supposedly wants to make money, why aren't you going like, hey, we're going to live stream this on TikTok with a completely different group of people, and these people are going to be the people who are teaching a brand new young demographic who's only on TikTok, right? Because let's be honest, most vet, let's say 40 plus, aren't going to be watching their TikTok phone for long periods of time, or their TikTok app for long periods of time. Like, I just think that the spectrum needs to be broadened, right? It goes back to the 2-stroke, 4-stroke, electric dirt bike. People fight me all the time. Electric dirt bikes will kill the sport. Well, guess what? I remember when 4-strokes were going to kill the sport. And here we are, right? Like, I may not like, I'm certainly not
Y2K was
selling.
going to kill us all.
Right. Like, I'm not selling my dirt bike, my 4-stroke, but I'm not gonna, if somebody wants to go go race me on the track with their electric bike, I'm not going to be like, get out of here. Right. Like, that's just a different demographic, but we all love the same sport. Right. Like, I may not want the electric bike. I may not want certain aspects of chiming in, of people telling me how this sport works. Well, guess what? Some other people might. We just need to find a place where we can reach those people, instead of being the old heads that are in our industry who are like, we're going to do it the same way forever and ever and ever, right? Like, why can't we change it up? It's the same reason why we're seeing the SMX series and like all these other people trying to jump in on our sport, because, dude, the old way of doing things is not going to work forever. And that's just, it's weird to me that we don't want to have this broader conversation of like, cool, if you got Peacock, go hop on Peacock. If you got Facebook, cool, we're going to be there as well. If you got TikTok, we want to talk to you on TikTok, and have 3 different group announcers on 3 different platforms, and Johnny's in there somewhere.
Well, you bring up
Oh
a good
gosh, that's too nice.
Here, you bring up a good point, and I don't know if the guys in the chat room can help us or not. Twofold question. On World Supercross, who are the television announcers? Isn't it Langston and Emig?
No,
Isn't
Emig
that-
and Ralph.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I think
I'm
Langston
wrong.
was in conversation with it, but I don't think they actually signed it.
Okay, so I'm wrong with that. When you look at baseball and football, I don't, in all transparency, I don't watch any major league sports at all, just because my schedule is as busy
Nor
as
do
it
I.
is. Who's in the box? That's why maybe the chat room can help us out. Who are the commentators? Like, if you're watching football on Sunday, pro football, is it only ex-pros are the commentators, or do they have, what do you call it, Johnny, when you have the broadcaster bring somebody in that kind of carries the convo, and then you have the specialist?
Yeah, you got your Joe Buck, your
just
color
said
man.
broadcaster.
Color
Yeah,
man, there you go.
Or, I'm sorry,
So
color man is the baseball player. So
okay, so who's the other guy? Like,
That
if
would be
I
like-
watch Major League Baseball, is there the guy that's giving you the play-by-play and a guy that's carrying the conversation in the mainstream sports?
yeah, you got like Joe Buck and then Troy Aikman in there for football, and Joe Buck does the play-by-play, and Aikman adds personal player experience type stuff.
So it is kind of an industry norm then to have somebody who carries the conversation and someone that's giving those minute details.
Yes, but that's what's so amazing about Daniel Blair. He can do both jobs.
Well,
He can
so
carry the
Todd Harris.
conversation.
And to your point, Chris, so can Todd Harris.
I agree.
And that's why I was trying to build the framework, because if I understand, Todd Harris has been through X Games and he's been 25, 30 years. He is that play-by-play guy that the networks want, that carries the conversation. He knows exactly how to tee up Daniel Blair, whether it's through an earpiece or just, bantering off of each other. You don't think the entire viewer base would love listening to Todd Harris and Daniel Blair banter? And I'm very partial to JT Money. I think he does a great job. I love the way he interviews. You put JT Money on the ground, you put Daniel, and you put Todd Harris in the booth. You can't tell me that you don't have the perfect trio there.
But be real quick, interject. You have the perfect trio, but what about the dudes who do like the 1 or 2 other outliers that we're talking about? Though,
Yeah.
Why can't we give them a home in just a different platform. Sure, we're not going to see them on the streaming service, but hey, you can tune in to your Instagram and see them giving a completely different perspective that's sanctioned by everybody and everybody gets paid and all that other stuff. It's not outside. It's a part of it. It's just not on the main feed. And I think giving that option to people where a new writer, a new person to the sport can be like, this is a little bit too technical for me. I'm going to go to, this platform and watch it over here.
Pierre, you make an amazing point. Like with
Really good point.
CrossFit, they will have their live broadcasts on like several different deals. Like, okay, this is for the Spanish people. Hey, this is for, German people. And it's amazing because you might tune into something and you don't resonate with the people talking. I don't know. You might just not like how they sound. And then you move to somebody else and you're like, hey, I'm going to stick a home here. And then it creates a following for that.
Right.
And as opposed to losing somebody from the audience, you retain them because they went to a different platform and found it. And again, it's what we've said before is that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
So it goes back around tenfold.
And I'll take it one step further. And this is where I try and the way my mind works is I'm always the idea guy. I see the bigger picture. I may not understand the
chat
details.
said AC was an awesome commentator. And I agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, just looking at the chat.
No,
Agreed.
totally.
But they keep sticking with this guy, Ricky, who is awful at it. And yes, with all due respect, he's the best dirt bike rider all around that's ever thrown a leg over a bike. But that dude sucks at talking. He's awful. Like,
so what you do is you give Ricky a mic and you put him in the pits, right? Like you actually have him talk moto talk to the riders or to, the coach or to, whoever's out there.
I know, but that's a demotion.
Right?
I'd give him a plane ticket to go home.
Nice with a demotion.
I mean, I understand that it would be a demotion. I'm just saying, I hate to use the word inclusivity, but I just mean like some people will only watch because guess what? That's the GOAT. I'm watching the GOAT and I watched him race and I was a fan since the beginning and now I'm watching him on TV.
That's where you and I, our opinion completely differs.
Okay.
I don't think anyone cares that Ricky, most of the people that watch they don't know who Ricky is. They're just this little tiny guy here that's really mouthy. Yeah, maybe he is the greatest of all time, but they don't know him for that. And it doesn't matter. I would much rather have a guy like AC who didn't accomplish quite as much, but can speak way better, or Daniel, who was an LCQ guy that can speak way better and can articulate it better. I'd rather have that than, if you ever see them when they put the football players in there with zero personality. Oh yeah, they suck. And then I would much rather have a guy that was like a mid-tier player, like an Adam Archuleta that you probably never heard of, who can talk. Like it's more about being able to talk than it is what you did on the bike. Let's stop.
Sure.
Let's stop coasting off what you did.
That I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, the
UFC does it all the time too with different commentators.
Yeah, that's totally true.
And they send them packing if they're not good.
And we've all agreed Daniel would be the best because he is literally the utility player.
Yeah.
Articulates himself well, keeps his thread of thought, doesn't bounce around, stays on point, has the gate drops, has the experience. Like Chris said, maybe he doesn't have all the championships that some other the hosts have had, but what is it that we want as a fan? I like what you said, Pierre. My first motorcycle was in 78 to show my age, and I'm still as much of a fanboy now as I was in 78. To be involved in the sport now is just a blessing. However, I don't want to be told that green bike's a Kawasaki. I don't like being yelled at like Ralph Shaheen did, screams, hollers. I don't care to know that Tomac's mechanic is getting birds out of his closet, out of his garage during the week. That kind of stuff is completely irrelevant. But the disappointing part is anybody that you talk to that says, why in the hell is Ralph Shaheen in? Oh, he knows somebody at the broadcast. Hey, sure. Why in the world's Diffie? Oh, he knows somebody at the broadcast. I know that's real world, right? You probably could say that at baseball, football, soccer, hockey. That's not what we're saying here. If we want to grow the sport, we want to have higher retention, I think things have to change. I would expect Daniel's been jumping up and down from the highest level saying, and I don't know the numbers. Maybe somebody in the chat room may know the numbers. If I were a gambling guy, I would say that the numbers always go up when Daniel Blair's in the box. I'd be willing to wager that I would think that the numbers go up when Daniel's in the box.
I agree.
Harris is in the box. Every time's going to be better.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
All right, make sure you go vote in the chat because I've got a little chat there of who's the best MX broadcaster. We're not looking at the guys that are good at speaking that have made a profession out of it, but the guys that have transitioned from being on the bike to then being in the booth.
I don't even think that's a fair poll because clearly Daniel's the best because he can actually do the job where you just talk along with being a former racer. So it's like, I mean,
Well,
that's just my opinion.
I like what Slayer's saying right here. We go back to that number of 3, right? You got good cop, bad cop, and someone in the middle. You bring in Grant Langston with Daniel Blair with Todd Harris.
Dream team.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because Daniel
David Bailey, he was
Bailey was
good.
David Bailey's another one. You know, smooth, articulates himself well, definitely has the experience. But Daniel would play a really good guy where Grant Langston could be the good cop, and then Daniel would go bad cop. And literally in 5 minutes later, those two would switch roles.
Totally.
One be instigating it, the other one would be saying, "Oh no, this way's oh no," and then you've got Todd in the middle that literally is just teeing these two boys up. I mean, it would be an incredible show.
You know what's interesting to me is that if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure there is a school, quote unquote, that these announcers and talking heads have to go to, especially at that high level of like ABC, NBC. Like they actually have to go to a broadcasting school. I'm trying to think of the name, like that allows them to get trained on how to specifically tee off someone and how to pick up the conversation and all that stuff. Am I correct in that? I think that's true.
They have to go. They have to do a lot of classroom time, is what I understand.
Okay.
Which is interesting to me because even like what was put here in the chat room, you know, you've got and I hate to say it, you have the non-professional guys that are misnaming the riders and on, you know, it just, the list goes on. And I guess as we started today's conversation, people will say we're being nitpicky. We're not being nitpicky as much as it is. I don't understand how this industry doesn't give the fans, screw what the four of us think, give the fans what they want. And nobody's been out there saying, you know what, that Ralph Shaheen, he is phenomenal. They're not saying that he, you know, like Johnny said, Johnny
is great at the, oh, look what just happened. That kind of,
it makes me want to punch the TA every time he goes off like that.
I feel like that's exciting. I'd rather that than Lee Duffy say it. And
they're one in the same.
Jason Wygant is going to be in the booth?
Yes, 100%.
I mean, he does a good job with Moto.
He's okay. He's okay.
He's the most knowledgeable on everything, and he doesn't speak too long. He articulates his point, but then you need somebody that's a little bit more analytical in there with him. And Ricky, my biggest pet peeve about Ricky is he won't catch something. And sometimes I'm like, how was this guy so good on a motorcycle that he didn't see that? And then the other thing that is Carmichael always a little bit relives his past a little bit on the broadcast where he said, hey, I would have done this and that thing. And I just feel let's just continue about the race.
Well,
maybe that's
the thing about Weege is he's very particular. And if you like him, you like him. If you hate him, you really hate him. He wanted to go to NASCAR. He flunked out of NASCAR. NASCAR took a look at him and went, well, the general public isn't going to like him. So we want to really expand this thing. Why are we taking their reject and making him the top guy? Listen, I like Weege. I think he does a good job, but I'm just saying, like, wouldn't we look at that and say, like, well, NASCAR's bigger than us. They kind of figured that out a little bit more. Wouldn't we want to follow? If they don't want him, why do we want him?
No, I mean, because maybe he's just better for Moto. I guess I disagree with you again.
But it's not growing, Johnny. Like, what's the problem? And that's my point.
Like, why? Okay,
because we make stupid decisions.
Because
we make stupid decisions and we keep repeating the same mistakes and putting guys in there that don't belong. They're going to repeat the same stupid crap. Like Pierce says, let's do something totally.
I feel like that's an unfair assessment. I am sorry. I am speaking over you. I will let you respond. Unfair assessment because we haven't seen Wygant in there for a whole Supercross season to see if it has a larger retention rate than somebody else.
That'd be fair. And I wouldn't be as against Wygant as I make it sound. I'm just saying, like, it boggles my mind that they're considering moving on from Daniel Blair, which to me, I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
all right, you guys are stepping right over the biggest issue that you just brought up. When you look at when they brought James Stewart in, who was in the booth with James Stewart? Not this last couple times, but the very first time they brought James in, who was with him? Jason Wygant.
Oh, Wygant.
Okay. So why wasn't Daniel Blair the one that was in the booth? If you look at the whole Racer X penetration of the Supercross this year, we now have the Racer X Redux during every Supercross show. A little bit more Racer X dropping in. You're seeing a little bit more Racer X being dropped in during Supercross Live. All of a sudden now Wygant is doing Supercross Live. Now Wygant is taking over Lurch's role in the stadium. Do you not see the infiltration of the same Racer X staff? Mathis, JT Money, Wygant. Do you start to see the infiltration of all of this? Because to me, when you step over Daniel Blair to bring, and I like Jason, if Jason watches this show, I text him, I say hi to him, I wish him a happy birthday. I think he's a great guy at what he does. I don't think he works harder than anybody I know in the sport. I will give him that. But it would be completely out of a line to say that Jason deserves to be next to James Stewart over Daniel Blair. You will never get me to agree to that.
Yeah,
to me, Daniel Blair has paid all the dues. If you're going to have a momentum shift and Racer X is going to start permeating the network with their own people, because you have the RCU with Ricky and MX Sports, that's pretty well established. You have the JS7 and the Outdoor National, that's pretty well established. You have Davey showing up on James Stewart's podcast. Now we have James Stewart in the booth. Coincidental? I don't think so. Now Daniel Blair is getting bumped so that Wygant can come in, be in the booth with JS7. So now you got Ricky, JS7. Now you have Wygant. You have JT Money on the ground, and Daniel Blair is going to be the one standing, musical chairs over. Nobody sees that as fishy?
Yeah, and hold on, Hopper. Like, I don't want to say, like, if you put Wygant against Lee Diffie, then I'm going to go with Wygant. If you put Wygant against, like, he's not a bad announcer. What I'm just saying is he's not as good as Daniel Blair, and I guess that's really my only point.
That's what I'm saying. Daniel Blair has earned his stripes to be the next in line if there's going to be a promotion, and instead he's
definitely put in the most work to learn how to broadcast and take his past experience rather than somebody else. But ironically, Coach, this is exactly what we're sort of asking for. Is we're asking for a mix-up, and so things are changing. So maybe we should let it at least be excited for the change, and then we'll have more evidence whether or not we enjoy the change or not. And then if the masses think
Johnny,
that this is,
let me ask you this: if they got rid of Biden and put Kamala in, is that the kind of change you want?
honestly, I wouldn't say no to that. You know, as much as I'm a Republican.
But my point is, you're trading the same for the same. You're not.
But see, the difference.
Well, you do have a good
problem
point
that I
there.
have with it, though, Johnny, is we all want change, but we want change for better. And we haven't given Daniel the chance, the industry, the broadcast, and Daniel has proven himself. So if you want an exciting change, put someone in here who's proven what he can do. Jason Wygant is good at what he does, but he hasn't put in the time, at least in the broadcast booth, because Lord knows Jason Wygant has put in many years to get where he's at. He's taken on a lot of roles. I don't think a lot of people realize all that he does for Racer X.
That's for real.
He's a phenomenal dude.
Yeah, he works his ass off. Nobody's doubting that.
But if we're looking at trying to get a change for the better for the sport, Johnny, why not put somebody who's proven himself over and over again? And I don't know about you, but can you imagine being Daniel? Hey, by the way, you're going to go get in the booth with X person. Oh, next week it'll be Y. And Daniel is like a chameleon. He can work with somebody that all four of us may find extremely annoying. Daniel, you never sense that when he's talking. You get somebody who talks over Daniel when he's in the booth. You never sense Daniel's frustration with that. You have on and on and on the list goes. Daniel's proven that he is that ultimate utility player. Now's the time to give him the chance to go into the big time booth.
Well, we've established that Daniel Blair is getting the short end of the stick, and it shouldn't be. But moving on to maybe a different topic as far as the silly season, I know you guys have said some stuff on this show that ended up becoming a reality to the big media. And I think that's important that you guys were the ones that dropped the bombs here first.
So let's start dropping bombs.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season change. Where do you want to start, Johnny? Do you want to go to a developing team like Triumph, or do you want to go to established teams like Pro Circuit? And who's going to be that fourth, maybe fifth guy at PC?
Let's start with Triumph, Coach. I know you got some insight there.
Well, stop and think about Triumph. We know who's running Triumph, right, Bobby? Who are his two favorite people throughout all the years, 250, 450? Pretty simple. Anderson and Jalik Swoll. We know Anderson signed another year. He's one more year at Cowie. That bridges him to 25, which is when they're going to roll out the 450 program. I haven't heard anything. Have you guys? Has Jalik been re-signed by Husky? I have not heard that.
I've heard it's a done deal with him and Mostman at Triumph.
That's where I would go with it as well, because we know that Ryder D is getting Mostman's position at Gas. We know Pierce has a 2-year deal. Gas 250, Pierce Brown, and Ryder. When you go over to Triumph, it only makes sense Jalik and Mosiman. We know that Levi Kitchen's going to Pro Circuit. My question with Pro Circuit is, do they run a 4-man team, or do they bring in Volan? Because I heard Volan was going.
Mathis was saying Levi was potentially going to KTM.
Well, I heard
that was on the table.
Yes, it was on the table, but he's gone he's gone PC. So now you've got Handmaker there, you've got Crashadoo, and I don't know why, but they're bringing Fortner back again. And then, so now you look at that 4-man team, and you've got Levi. Does Levi going there bump Volan out, or do they put a 5th bike and bring Volan in?
Coach, I have a question to ask about Pro Circuit. Jet is riding outdoors for Pro Circuit this year. Jet Reynolds. I thought that was done. I thought it was over.
No, they have to honor the contracts for the year, but there won't be a re-up. It's done. And that's the problem that you run into is, okay, now you look at that Pro Circuit team. Let's just assume that they run a 5th bike. We know Levi is now going there. We know that the other 3 are there. You add Volan. Do they bring Beaumer up over at KTM to be next to Vial? Because
I would hope they learn from what they did to Max to keep Beaumer down, but you never know.
I don't know. Beaumer, remember what Johnny said last week? The top 5 future guys, was it 4 or 5, Johnny, were as faster than most 450, 250 guys.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah, they were infiltrated in the top 10. And speaking of comments, a lot of people were saying, well, they got the track first. And I'm like, yeah, I know they got the track first. But still, if you're thinking about amateurs, they should be considerably slower. Like, hey, for me, example, whenever I race against these guys, I was around 8 to 12 seconds slower than these guys a lap in the nationals, right? That wasn't it was twice as long. You're looking at like 2-minute lap time. So it's not like Supercross, but still, and I held my pro card, right? So I was a professional, and yet I was still getting my ass kicked considerably, right? And when you have these future guys here that don't have their pro card, and yet they're already on par with top tier factory machinery and talent, it raises my eyebrows as to, This is interesting.
And just to go just a small tangent on this one, and Coach, you actually might have a great ad for this. Is that a testament to this? Back in the day, we always heard stories of Ricky and Stewart. They trained by themselves. They didn't want anybody around. They didn't want anybody to see how they were training. And now we have a whole bunch of these guys who they train at the same tracks with sometimes the same trainers. Is it one of those things where everybody's just getting faster because they see the kid next to them is getting faster, so I have to push even harder, and so now the playing field's getting just way more leveled out? or is it something else? Like how are so many kids these days just getting to that level of just ripping, absolutely, I mean, destroying. I mean, even here at the local tracks around my town, like some of these kids on the super minis are absolutely furious. And I'm like, where did these kids come from? And how are they stepping up to that level? When I remember it was not always like that, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of meat on the bone on what you just mentioned, especially your last statement, where you get a young man or a young woman that isn't training at a facility, but like you said, just vicious. They're very aggressive. Yes, we could argue that the bikes, my first motorcycle was a 78 RM80. We had 4 inches of travel. Now you look at the 85s with 12 to 16 inches of travel on them. I think the question that you posed at first about, think about Chad, Ricky, and James training with each other. Even to this day, they say no way in hell would they allow one of the other two to come and train with them.
Right.
And then the success of Star Yamaha that says, well, hey, when we get to the track every day, we're putting in race day reality type motos. What I find interesting is, don't you find it intriguing how the talking puppets, when Tomac is winning, everything is about be by yourself, do it your own way. Then when somebody comes from a facility where there's 4 or 5 riders, oh, see, the best thing in the world to do is train who you race on the weekend, elevates the bar. Everybody knows what's expected of them on Saturday.
Sure.
And you have the attrition that we've seen the last 3 years, where look at the amateur ranks. By the time the kids get to the pro ranks, instead of being ready to really catapult and set a career ablaze, they barely can hang on and finish the first year of their pro career. Look at Seth Hammaker having to tap out of the outdoor nationals because he said he had Epstein-Barr. Look at Brad West, who left the United States and went back home with Epstein-Barr. The list goes on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a multitude of issues. When you have an environment where every single day is stopwatch nationals, if you can get one person out of that group to win a championship, then that is the smartest model on the face of the earth. But yet Tomac's been cleaning house the last couple of years, and yet you don't see a lot of the talking puppets saying, hey, look at Tomac. He's training high, racing low. He's out there doing his own thing. But yet he's been very dominant. But because, again, there's a lot of these underlying agendas of the conversation and the narrative, we aren't giving Tomac credit for doing it solo the way Ricky James and Chad did. What we're over here doing is continuing to kiss the behinds of a model that says every day is stopwatch nationals. We're going to build it. How do we validate it? Well, look at these champions. Well, wait a second. Where has the 450 champion come from? Where has the 250 champion come from? So if we look at last summer, the entire Star Yamaha team was decimated. They didn't have anybody on the track. They had Chisholm come in as a fill-in rider.
Right.
How'd that work out for you? You go through, and right now, my question is, as we go into the summer, who do we see riding for Yamaha? I was thinking about this earlier. We have Thrasher that's out. I don't know what Styles Robertson's situation is. With Levi already announcing he's going to KTM, I don't think he's going to be on as good of equipment as you would normally see. So now all of a sudden you see Jay Coop is going to go to the 450 for the outdoors, but then he moves to 450 for next year. What does the Yamaha team look like next year? We know we've got Deegan. Do they keep Jordan? What is your thoughts, guys, on did Jordan Smith do a good enough job in Supercross that they retain him, or does he have to stamp it outdoors as well?
If I'm Yamaha, I'm keeping. I think there's too many moving parts in some sense when it comes to this atmosphere that we have, where we automatically know, oh, this person, are we keeping him? Let's toss him out or whatever. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying is, if all these people are training with each other, and now we're going to take the fact that maybe one season panned out kind of okay or didn't pan out at all. Oh, we're going to toss him. Well, now this kid is having to adjust to this new training style. And he hasn't even gotten up to speed with what was going on behind it, in the style of training that he was using before. So For me, I try and think of longevity, right? I hate the fact that although it does keep our sport interesting, there is a certain animosity I have towards the fact that our teams don't develop. Like we're sure KTM does it. Sure, Kawasaki has been known to do it with Team Green and moving riders up and stuff like that. But it's like once we get to the pro levels, you can be tossed in the trash like super quick without allowing, I guess, like that development to really like entrench in the person. So in my, that was a really long-ended answer, but yeah, I would have kept him.
Pierre, what you're saying is it is crazy that they'll put that much development and then it's just sink or swim. Right when they get to the pros, there's no development whatsoever once they get to the pros.
Right.
Where every other professional sport, look how many quarterbacks sit. Like they'll take first round draft picks and sit them for a year.
Dude, such a good point. Exactly what I'm trying to get at. Yes.
Well, not to put you on the spot though, Pierre, give me one Cowie rider in the last decade that's come out of the amateur ranks and jumped into the pro ranks and has excelled.
Was Villapoto a part of Team Green?
That would be more than 10 years though.
Oh, well then I have no idea.
Yeah,
See,
I actually did a
the
video on this and they've got a yard sale, a pile of guys that they've trashed.
And that's what's so scary is because if we look at the idea that we as an industry, I would think we would want to build, like if I was Mitch Payton and you're handing off athletes to me out of the amateur program that aren't really ready to go to that next level. And now I've got to essentially put my R&D dollars. Mitch doesn't pay the salaries or bonuses, but he's got a lot of money invested in those bikes and the trucks and trailers and mechanics and staff. I would be frustrated as heck because if you look at it, what is it that Star Yamaha does? They just poach when someone's in their prime. Deegan's a perfect example. KTM spent money and then they just poached them. Now we could argue that Deegan was an investor in Star and we've already talked about all that. But the idea is because if I look at the Star Yamaha team, we don't know how well Thrasher will come back. I don't know if Styles has another year because he's been injured. I don't know if you guys heard, does he show up for outdoors? I hope so. But what are we going to see out of Styles? Do they retain him? The only people I see Yamaha starting next year with is Deegan and Jordan Smith.
Styles is signed for next year.
Perfect. Thank God, because I love Styles a lot.
Yeah.
But
and
there's only
Max Voland may head over there is what I heard.
Now, I think it would be great if that's indeed going to be the case. But what are the expectations of Voland when he gets over there? Is it because he's got the experience now with KTM that he's expected to be a podium guy every weekend? Because
if you sign with Star, you're there to win. That's it.
Well, that's what I was going to say to Pierre's point. So he goes over there learning Pierre just said it, new trainer, new program, new bike, new chassis, new location. You have 1 year and you're gone. What I find is interesting is that Levi Kitchen chose to leave Star Yamaha. That to me sends the biggest red flag in the corner that I have for the entire.
Well, do you think that has
so
to do a lot with you've got a Star underneath that tent?
Yes.
I know there's no pun intended, but I'm talking about Deegan, where guys are trying
I think it has more to, are you willing to race for free or are you willing to get paid?
Maybe, I mean, just to go off on a different way, maybe these teams are just getting way overextended, right? Like, why does Kawasaki need 4 or 5 250 riders? Why aren't they picking 2 guys and going like, hey, we're going to dial these dudes in. These are our guys, and we're going to stick with them for 2-3 years, right? I'm going to sign a contract. I'm going to put my nuts in that basket. And the reason why is because it makes sense for me to put my money in. Because here's the thing especially with PC is at least, okay, rumors. Everybody talks about how PC, their team is like, here's your bike, right? Like, here it is. We'll make a couple of adjustments, but that's your bike. Okay. Well, I have, let's say 3 or 4, maybe 5 people on that 250 bike. I don't have a lot of time to go to each and every bike and develop that bike with the rider and create a package. Instead, what I'm going to do is the shotgun effect. I'm going to create a bike. I'm going to get a bunch of riders. Whoever sticks is who I'm taking. And that mentality, it's almost like we're saying, okay, if I put enough votes in the ballot box, my guy's going to win. It may not be the right way to do it, but I'm just going to flood this field with a bunch of bikes, right? Same thing with Yamaha. I'm just going to get a bunch of dudes on blue bikes to go race, and somebody's going to stick, versus Yamaha or Star saying, hey, okay, we obviously know Deegan. They're not going to let that guy go. Let's pick one other dude, get 2 dudes on that bike. We'll create a bench, right? We'll have dudes sitting off to the side, but these 2 are who we are picking. And these are our guys, and we're going to make them into lifers, if you will, right? Like the old days where you'd see guys on Hondas for most of their career, right? Like it's this mentality of that we've shifted to, where it's like, yeah, it's probably the Instagram mentality, right? And bang, 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 bang. Let's just get to the next one. Next guy. If he's not making it happen, move to the next guy, versus saying, hey, I'm going to develop this. I'm going to make something out of it.
Jeff Ward talks about that all the time. When he was riding for Cowie, the people that he worked for took good care of him, and he knew the Honda ProLink and everything was going better. Yamaha at one time was a little bit faster, then Honda was a little bit faster, then it handled a little bit better. Then Barnett's 125 came out with full floater, thing handled beautifully. And Jeff's like, I'm just staying the course. These guys
Right.
are working with me. They're developing the bike. And then, Jeff will go down in history as, one of the few guys, if not the only guy, that has 125, 250, and 500. To
Yeah.
your point, exactly. And
What
stop and think about Jeff Ward. What are the 3 things that you remember with Jeff Ward? Cindy Salo, Kawasaki, and Oakley, beginning to end.
What's
Yep.
funny though, coach, is you say that, but then you talk to Bradshaw and Glover. God, they wish they would have went to Honda.
Oh, absolutely. No, you can't blame them for wanting to do those things, but the raw reality of why they didn't change goes back to Pierre's point about loyalty and doing the right things, for the long term, not just that immediate gratification.
Should I share the Bradshaw story that he told me?
Share it.
Okay. So I had Bradshaw with me, and he was talking about that. And one of the years, the Yamaha, he got into it when he was at the test track, freaked out, called Mitch, said, Mitch, you got that Honda at the shop. Let me borrow it. He took Mitch's modified Pro Circuit Honda down to the Yamaha test track and put in faster lap times in front of the Japanese engineers and said, make it like this.
Yep.
It didn't go over well. It didn't go over well.
Yep. No, it's unfortunate. And then we kind of zoom out a little bit further. I've always advocated, when I get my pro team together, we will always have at least 2 people that are getting paid a small salary riding the exact same bikes. So should somebody get injured, you've already got a fill-in rider, but they're not getting thrust onto a bike that they've never ridden. There's not a 12 horsepower differential between the practice bike and the race bike. The suspension's the same, the motors are the same, the tires are the same. And then that way all sponsors are at. Now, to your point though, Pierre, I don't know why PC's always had 4. If you look at every other team, right, they've got usually just 250 riders, Gas, Honda, KTM. But we also don't want to be hypocritical here. We're thankful that, Mitch is willing to employ 4 riders. I don't know if that's going to go to 5 or 6 next year, but
yeah, but what good is it if those riders, look at what's happened to their team this season.
Yep.
Right.
Well, and I'll take what you just said one step further. Here's the hard part about it. We have 2 things that have undermined all of the pros being able to make money. Well, actually, there's 3 things. Chris has just did a video on it. The guys are willing to race for free. They actually pay to race. They get, no pun intended, they race for peanuts. We'll leave that one alone. That's too good to not hit over this. The second thing is we have these wealthy grandparents and parents that are paying to be on the team. So you have at least one rider is on a pay-to-play program at the amateur ranks particularly. And then you have athletes that are willing to sign a professional contract only to be bonused only for salary as for payment. Show me one baseball player, one soccer player, one basketball player, one football player that's willing to only pay for performance. Get a touchdown, get $10,000. Because that's where our sport has gravitated towards, because the riders and the families have allowed it. I hate to say it, but that's just raw reality.
Oh no, it's totally true. And a lot of that, as a moto parent, right? As a kid who has his super mini back there, right? Like there's the dream that is sold. Hey, the limelight, there's nothing like standing on that podium. I remember the first race my son ever won, and he was excited, and I was like, yeah, man, think about how the pros feel. Think about, Mosman or whoever, right?
Sure.
But the fact of the matter is they don't know the other side. And sometimes this culture of like the limelight, the posters, the lines at the pits, all that stuff turns into, well, maybe that's more important, right? The legendary status, maybe the money isn't, or, oh, the money will come, the money will come, the money will come, right? And it's one of the biggest issues that I have on race day is that I cannot support the riders that I want to support by walking over to the KTM tent and being like, let me buy a Plessinger shirt from the team that I know I'm supporting the team, and the money from that team is going to go to the rider, right? Like, that is a huge open gap that could be filled in pay if we just stopped going like, no, it's bonus, or hey, X, Y, and Z payouts. Well, dude, my son would have bought 5 different shirts if he could have gotten a shirt from Suzuki for Ken Roxon and a KTM shirt and all of his favorite riders. $25 a pop. Hey, at the end of the day, $25 a pop split 3 ways could mean a couple extra $100,000, not $100,000, hundreds or thousands of dollars in the pockets of the riders for everything else, right? Like, that's what drives me nuts. Yes, you're right. It's wrong. We're doing it wrong. It's wrong because some of us, like me, are like, hey, but isn't this feeling cool? You raced, you won. Isn't this a cool feeling? There needs to be a culture shift, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
And take it one step further. If you guys remember when Travis showed up at Daytona and he was out there in the Cernix, he had a little 5th wheel trailer, real small one. And after Daytona, I remember being out there and every 18 wheeler was gone. There was only one light in the middle of the infield, not on the racetrack, but the infield out where the parking lot was at.
Yeah.
And it was Travis Pastrana. The trailer had lights all around it. And Travis was sitting out there just signing t-shirts, just signing shirt after shirt after shirt.
Right.
And to your point, can you imagine what your son would have thought if not only could he have bought that shirt from Plessinger, but then to have Plessinger and his beaming smile, cowboy hat, signing the shirt?
Yeah. Like all of that, right? And it's weird that we don't. It's such a 1 + 1 = scenario, and I don't understand who needs to be like shaken to be able to say like, hey, if you make it more lucrative for the riders and for the teams, you will make this sport better for everyone. Everybody will be happier. Money will flow from the top to the bottom, or from the bottom to top. And I mean, however you decide you want it to go, but more money is only going to make the sport a better place. And then, you have outside of that, hey, I've bought a shirt from this person. I know that I'm supporting this team versus, hey, I'm supporting this big corporate monster by buying an AMA Supercross shirt, right? Like,
well, and we've talked about it on the show, Pierre, the way that the contract reads, that as long as there's 3 individuals on the t-shirt, they do not have to pay royalties to those 3 riders. The magical number is 3.
Yeah.
And those pros have to sign off on that agreement before the season. So that they're not even getting royalties of which their picture is on.
That's ridiculous.
What can you imagine telling Kobe Bryant? Can you imagine telling Shaquille O'Neal? I'm showing my age here because those are the guys I remember all days. But, can you imagine telling Michael Jordan, hey, we're going to put your name on it. We're going to sell a boatload, but we're not going to give you any money for it. But thanks.
Yeah.
You're an ambassador for the sport. Good job.
Yeah, good job. And what's weird about it is, and you guys can say yay or nay on this, again, we could disagree, is, I'm not a big fan of this whole talk about union, right? A riders union, because I've seen unions go way bad, right? Like, you start centralizing that power, you start paying into this union, like, things can go sideways really quick. But the fact of the matter is, like, somebody needs to stand up, right? Like,
Okay.
somebody needs to say we're no longer doing this.
Cooksey's getting all excited from
the
this
union
topic.
talk.
Let's go.
So Well, no, and I agree with you. There are unions that do get abused. There's like teachers don't need tenure. Like if a teacher sucks, they should get fired. There should be no such thing as tenure. And the
Exactly.
union has abused that. But the only reason unions exist is because employers don't treat people fairly. If you
Agreed.
want to get rid of unions, treat people fairly.
Right.
And you'll notice in these professional sports, and they have the Screen Actors Guild, you have pro football, pro baseball. It's essential in professional sports because they get exploited by the nature of it. And that's what this is.
So
We
let
need
me
an
push.
association.
Let me push back just a tiny little bit.
Okay, go
right?
for it.
Is you said, hey, the reason why things don't get better is because, right, there's no union, and the reason why things get better is because there's a union involved. But once
I didn't say either of those. I didn't say it gets better because of their union. I said those sports that have a union seems to be working better. I don't think it necessarily depends on one or the other.
Oh, okay. Well, the same argument though is once things do get better, what happens then? Because the union then starts finding other nitpicky things, and that's how we
I
grow
agree.
this monster of a union that turns into like, well, I'm showing up to none of the racers are showing up to Glendale Supercross unless X, Y, and Z happens, and now you have fans that are like, and obviously I'm
Pierre, but like,
really
why
taking
is
this
it
out.
that every major sport that makes a crap ton of money and the athletes that make a crap ton of money, they all have a union? I'm with you. I don't believe in unions. However, I'm for drastic change when you need to mix some stuff up. But hockey,
Sure.
baseball,
But
football.
this is what's so crazy about it. None of us are for unions based on the negative side effects. I don't want that to come across the wrong way. I think what the four of us continue to say is, why should there be even a need to discuss the need for a union?
Yes.
And the
Coach,
rules
Coach,
specifically say
a
if you
good
start
business-
a union, you get banned.
A good business plan doesn't need a union. A good balanced business plan, like say the F1 program right now, World Supercross, which is why I'm so supportive of a World Supercross. If you pay back and have a business model that treats both sides fairly, then you don't need a union.
Yeah.
Johnny,
So
Johnny,
the
what is
most,
Johnny,
the
what is
best
the
working
clause?
union here, I'm just doing a quick little Google search, is basketball. And basketball's union has a pot of $3.5 billion and it's divided between 1,200 players in its union.
Not bad chump change. Johnny, what is the stipulation in the contract that states that they can't have a union or be a part of an organization or a body of
Oh
riders?
gosh, off the top of my head, because I looked at it a couple weeks ago. It'd take me a little while to find it, but I could find it. But there would be some white noise here. Maybe I'll look at it as you guys are talking.
Well, you want me
but-
to talk about Johnny? Because I just sent it to my union buddy to look at.
Yeah, what
it
I
has to
understand,
do.
maybe
You can associate. You can start an association, but if you have any sort of plan to stop or boycott any type of event, you're out. But
yeah,
you can start
be
an
suspended on their
You can start an
discretion.
association, but if there's any intent on banding together to disrupt an event, you're out.
I think in John, not to be argumentative, Chris, but I think in Johnny's video when he was going through, I think it was rule change you were doing, Johnny. And as Johnny was going through, it was during the Piazza debacle, and you were going through and you were listening, trying to figure out what was the offense that Bobby did. When you were going through your video, you'd found that clause that essentially insinuates that you can't be anything organized, if I'm not mistaken. I just don't
Here it
remember.
is right here. I can read it to you if you want. Exactly. Let's see. Go ahead. I got to pull it up here.
But
Just
yeah,
wanted to-
essentially, and on the whole Bobby thing, I feel like you need to have the ability to change your perspective with given new evidence. And I guess from what I've heard is that like some of the other riders, the same with the Alpine Star guys and the Dunlop guys, they were finding it being annoying that Bobby was revving his bike. And so they asked him to stop and he allegedly didn't stop. And whatever the whole root cause was of the thing, there should have never been a Feld employee to being disrespectful to one of the
Is that you,
riders,
Rhea?
even
Okay.
if somebody was not playing ball as well with you. And truthfully, that whole scenario has worked out better for Bobby because now he doesn't have to have guys rev his bike. He innovated, and now they can sign his jersey and sign his bike, and he can go ride it out there, and it doesn't hurt the rest of the people being petty in the pits. So it was a way that he learned from the experience and he grew from it, and it still made it work. Which
am I mistaken? I thought that there was also an issue with people, because people were paying him to sign his bike, correct? Wasn't there an issue with that? Wasn't that like another issue?
No,
It's
the
like,
issue
hey,
was giving donations to rev his motorcycle. I don't believe
Oh,
I've heard
okay.
of an issue from him getting donations to sign the motorcycle. And I was just filling in the noise while Cooksey was finding this thing. So do you want to read it, Cooksey, now that you found it?
I don't know. I just sent it to you. Do you want me to read it, or do you want to throw it up on screen? Whatever works for you.
Am I supposed to throw it up on the screen?
Engaging in a rider boycott, public protest, or similar concerted activity meant to stop, delay, or otherwise inhibit the start of competition of any portion of Monster Energy AMA Supercross event. That's the rule. Number 8. It doesn't say anything about being an association, but yes, they would consider that. They throw that under detrimental to the sport, which covers everything. So, but legally, there wasn't anything my buddy at the union could do. So
then, I mean, what you do is you get a guy who's well-spoken, like Adam Sansarillo, to be the leader of some sort of
I know, but
association, and he goes
that's never
forth
going to
and he's the
happen.
voice.
Sorry, Pierre, I'm interrupting you.
It's okay.
No, it's not really okay. It's why do we think that wouldn't happen? Because if he wants a job inside the industry, but outside of riding afterwards, why risk your livelihood of something, of potentially being a broadcast member or being a team manager for Kawasaki or something, like I don't want to say incestuous, but there's a lot of players inside that play ball with each other. So
Johnny,
yes, you're right.
They'll go as far as to go after your daytime job, like what they did with me.
Yeah, and that says a lot right there, because Johnny, if you listen to what you just said, and if you listen to what Chris just said, do we not sense a level of intimidation? Let's call it for what it is. To Pierre, let's just use Pierre's example of AC. AC, even I haven't spoken to AC about this, so please don't call him up and bitch at him. But let's just say AC said, yeah, you know what? I have a voice. I have a level of, clout in the sport right now. I think I'm gonna get this in motion. He immediately isn't going to do it because of the backlash from Fox, Cowie, the whole 9 yards. So going back to what Chris said earlier, why don't we have an environment where people can feel comfortable to say, hey, the way that we pay our riders isn't right? Well, it's because we know the OEMs are in on it. Okay, why are we okay to not pay the riders? In fact, we make them pay to play, to race. All right, well, we don't care about that. That's what we're going to, okay, so we won't buck that system either. Merchandise issues. And then on the list goes. Because everybody's afraid that you're going to get your throat cut, you're going to be blackballed, and you're not going to have a place in the sport.
But so I'm going to say something, and people are going to disagree, but at some point, like, somebody has to be the martyr.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it doesn't, like, at some point somebody, otherwise, like, all this conversation and all this back and forth means absolutely zilch, right? Somebody, yeah.
I've studied this
I'm
quite
honestly,
a bit.
I'm tired of the conversation
Hold
because
on, Johnny,
the first one
exhibit-
through
hold
the
on.
door is going to get trampled, Cooksey, and
Well,
I don't
no,
think
like Kurt
anybody's
Flood in
willing to do
baseball.
so.
Like baseball took Kurt Flood was the guy, the martyr. He was banned from baseball. He never really played. He ended up being a bartender. He's the reason they have a baseball association. These guys make all that money. Thank you,
So
Kurt Flood. We need a Kurt Flood.
Did that baseball association come back to him and say, hey, thanks for being a martyr. Here's $10 million of the 13 billion or whatever's in there?
Coach, he got screwed. It was a very sad ending.
Yep. But to Pierre's point, that's the problem, is we don't have somebody that's willing, as Johnny says, to give you the first one through the door, to get ostracized, to get completely crucified. And Johnny just walked away for a moment, but this is why, if you look at most of you guys know our largest division is our triathlon and our endurance division, marathons, runners, and all that. And just in the last 5 years, there's been a new association called the Professional Triathletes Organization, and they've gone head to head against the governing body and Ironman, which is the most powerful entity in the sport of triathlon. But what they did was they've got a very, very heavy investor that came in and said, you know what we'll do? We'll create an association, and there's funding that's involved with it, and all the athletes get compensated. I'm not going to waste time on the show today talking about it in minute detail, but all it was is it took an outside investor, a group of people that are organizing it, and to Pierre's point, someone that's willing to just say, we're going to do it differently. And this is how we're going to do it. Not bitching, not complaining. It's, we're going to do something different, and this is how it's going to roll out. This is the business plan. This is the marketing plan. Johnny, what I was just talking about is like the proliferation of the PTO in the triathlon world. You know, that's only 5-6 years old, but it took a big investment group to come in and say, we're going to do it different. All athletes that have a world ranking get compensated every single month based on those rankings. They get compensated to race to try to get their rankings higher to get a higher monthly stipend. But we need that investor to have confidence that if we come up with a program, that the program has marketing legs, it has growth legs. That's something people forget. We all want somebody to come in and donate a couple $1 million to get something off the ground. There's not a smart investor out there that's like, I've got $3 that I can loan you. Is it going to make me 6 in 5 years? Because if not, they're going to put their money where they can, real estate, whatever.
Very true.
Coach. So do you literally have Pierre, you literally have a platform. It's not a matter of how, it's a matter of who. And Pierre, what were you going to say?
No, I was just agreeing.
And in the chat, we were talking about who wins the East-West shootout, and it actually won that Jet was going to win over his brother Hunter, RJ, and Joe Shimoda.
You didn't put Deegan on there though.
Well, because you can only put so many people. You can only put 4 choices on there. So blame YouTube on the deal.
Somebody said something about Deegan crashing in practice at press day. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was in the comments. I haven't heard anything. Have you guys?
I have not heard anything either.
Okay.
But
I think
my
it'd be
point
all
is,
over
who do you
social
guys
media.
think is going to win the East-West shootout? I don't think Jet's going to win because I think Jet wants to get a paycheck and he's going to let his brother win. I think Hunter's actually going to win and Jet's going to do what he can to just clinch the championship.
I think Hunter wins, not because Jet lets him, though.
Jet already clinched.
Oh, okay. Well,
Sorry, Johnny.
No, I think we are about to see the Hunter that we thought we were going to see 3 or 4 years ago when he came over from MXGPs. We never got to see the potential that Europe got to see of Hunter. And when he first got here, he got hurt. Then he got hurt again. Then the bike didn't get along with him very well. And we've just seen him incrementally get to where he's at. I think he's going to destroy the outdoors, with one exception. Johnny's right-hand man, Mr. Vial, I think we're going to see Ferrandis in the 450. He's got something to prove. He's got MXGP background. Hunter is in that sweet spot where he should have been 3 years ago, and he certainly is determined. And then you've got Vial, obviously MXGP champion. How do you even begin to doubt him? You put those 3 together, and I think we're going to have a very fun summer. I mean, there won't be a lot of factory 450s. I think there might be 3, maybe 4.
Did you say Justin Cooper's going 450 outdoors this year?
No, he's going next year.
I was going to say Justin Cooper will be in it for the title if he's in the 250s.
Yeah, I said that incorrectly. He'll be going to 450 for Yamaha next year, in my opinion, next to Webb, because I don't see Tomac coming back. I don't know if Ferrandis will be willing to take a significant pay cut and just kind of be a third bike under the tent like Yamaha's done before. So it's now Webb, J. Coop, and Ferrandis. That'd be the only way I could see Ferrandis there. I'm hearing some rumblings that KTM wants Plessinger to go GNCC. I've heard that a couple times this week, which I thought was very interesting. Because I think
that's a great idea. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
How do you argue with it? So let's just say Plessinger goes GNCC. As far out as that sounds, I've heard it several times this week from different people that I didn't know. I'd heard it from other people. So if he goes GNCC route, do we see Ferrandis go to KTM? Do we see what does the KTM, we know Sexton's going there, but he's going to suck most of the oxygen and the money out of that camp. Who
Yeah.
would be the supporting staff? If Plessinger stays, does he stay for very little? Or does Plessinger go over to Gas? Here's the big question I have for you guys. Do we see Marvin Musquin show up somewhere? One of those two teams?
I hope so, but I don't think so.
Well, but then why am I seeing that he's got new contracts for gear and goggles? Is he going to go? I'm not saying statewide. Does he go over to MXGPs again? Like, I don't see the end of Marv right now. He's been very quiet.
Who did he sign with on the goggles and gear?
Yeah, I can't really say that, but I do know that he's re-signed. But I do know that he's re-signed.
Can you text it to me later, Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll text it to the group. But the idea here is it's like, okay, well, you know how those gear companies are and those goggle companies, they know something. Why would they sign him here stateside if he's going to go MXGP? We haven't heard a whole lot. We do know he was injured, but he was signed to race this year, but couldn't because of an injury. Do we see the resurgence of him when we go outdoors, or particularly next year? Let's say Sexton comes in. How cool would it be to see Sexton and Marv? How cool to be see Plessinger and Barcia at Gas? That would be really cool to see, because I still am figuring out where Ferrandis is going to go.
Coach, I think it's ludicrous to say that Plessinger should go to GNCC at this point in his career. The dude almost won a Supercross. But I'm not saying don't go GNCC. I'm saying give it 3 to 5 years. You can do GNCC at an older age. He's so good. There's not, you can say what you want about GNCC. There's no chance he's making as much money as he could racing Supercross or getting the exposure.
And he was beating the best people because everyone, well, at least there was a good portion of riders that weren't injured yet when he was going to win that Supercross race. There's a bunch of people that are kicking their feet. I'm sure Webb is as well, seeing that Tomac instantly got hurt. And do you guys, I know I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you think Tomac is Dunzo, or do you think he's coming back better than ever?
Oh, I'm going with the Dunzo.
I'm going with Dunzo.
I'm not as convinced that he's done, but I'm not sure. I'm definitely on the fence on this one, because it's going to go one of two ways. When you sit out, he's either going to be sick and tired of sitting at home and want to get back out there, and we're going to see him for 3 more years, or he's going to go, man, this is kind of nice to be home, and never come back.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just one of those things where he's just the dude has been through a lot. Like, can we admit that, right? With when he was with PC, right? Like, he's had huge ups and huge downs, and I think he had a huge up with Yamaha this season, and especially last season. I don't think I mean, the moment we all saw his foot sticking out from the side of his bike, him holding it up, everybody was like, what is going on here? And for him to ride off and to come out so quickly with like, hey, I have this injury, like, big ups to Yamaha for dropping that right away instead of holding it. But I also think that's a flag of him saying, like, you know what, just tell him, just say, I'm injured, and this is how severe it is. Because an Achilles is a pretty big one, is it not? I mean, that's one of those 6-month, 9-month recoveries, and then you're getting back on a brand new bike that you're going to have to try and dial in, versus just saying, like, I'm going out on top. It didn't end the way I thought it was going to end, but at least I'm not going through these huge ups and downs. I've made my money, and I'm going to start ET3 training, or I'm going to start being a guy in the booth. That's just how I feel it could go. I'm not saying he won't come back. I just can't imagine it being for 3 or 4 years and making that happen.
I want to see him do the Conor McGregor thing, because again, you guys know that I'm a big fan of there's no such thing as bad press, but literally say, I'm done. Have a Twitter says I've retired. And then he signs a $2 million deal with whoever it is.
Triumph.
Comes back. Yeah. Then he comes back to make
and
a bunch of cash.
And he tweets after every race, I would kick that dude's ass.
Right.
Something, because
he comes back with a Ducati deal.
Dude.
Unfortunately, it hurts, because you know that was a 6 or a 7-figure bonus to win that
Yep.
championship that he had in the bag. All he had to do was finish like 2 top 10s to make a huge payday. And then potentially there's rumors of him racing the outdoors with the Super Motocross Championship, that there was some financial benefit in that too. And if that contract ever existed, allegedly, let's just say maybe it did, hypothetically, there was probably a clause in there that said, if you're injured and you can't race, we don't have to pay you this money. So I would see him potentially having a bad taste in his mouth where he wants to come back to make a bunch of cash, regardless if that is full-blown Supercross. It might be, hey, let me sign up with World Supercross to have my retirement tour there. I don't know. I don't want to see him done.
I would agree with that. If he's going to go some way, do the World Supercross thing. Don't come back to normal Supercross. Maybe don't even do outdoors. Heck, do what Cooper did and like go race some random like GNCC wilderness, races, just to like bring the hype back up of him coming back into the sport. But yeah, I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to see him like ride off into the sunset. Right? Like the guy has done it, and he has shown that he is an absolute animal, right? Like the guy, for everybody said at the end of his PC career, he's not done. He's done. Like there's not a lot more he can do. There was chirpings of like, even if he goes to Yamaha, who cares? And then we saw like this huge resurgence of that fire inside of him, that I almost want him to just turn into the hero that bows out. Now, if he turns that into hype fest and decides, hey, I'm going to come back in just in a different way, great. But this is more of just like the heart feeling of like, we'll see you later, champ.
Pierre, I want to come back to what you just said right there, but to the chat question, keep in mind, if Plessinger doesn't get a good offer here in the motocross environment, he could make almost 7 figures as a top dog at KTM and GNCC. Don't forget about that.
Yeah.
There could be more money for him over there if the musical chairs don't work out the way that we're just talking about. See what I'm saying?
Why people go to arena cross.
Yeah.
But,
And, I would say, just from a marketing standpoint, my background in the marketing world is for Plessinger to go to a GNCC, like I feel like that's his people, right? Like the type of people who go to outdoor races, the single track or enduro or outdoor GNCC, any of that stuff, right? He has that following. Just purely on the marketing level, like it just makes sense for him to like, yeah, I'm this wild, long-haired cowboy, and look at me, I'm racing out here in the wild, doing this stuff. It just kind of goes with his image. So I would agree that, like I said, I think it's a phenomenal deal, and if he can make lots of money doing it, great.
Well, the money is definitely there. His dad's obviously off-road champion, and
Yeah.
Plessinger grew up on it, so it's a win-win-win. Going back, Pierre, to the second half of what you just said, one of the things that caught my eye this year, and I don't know what you guys think, remember how Eli was able to surpass Ricky, and then he surpassed James? The only person left for him to capture was McGrath at 72. And to Pierre's point, you look at the amount of momentum in the steamrolling that Eli came out with. We used to think that McGrath was like unattainable. Can
Right.
you imagine if, let's just say Tomac does exactly what Pierre says, kind of just lets the ankle heal. He comes in, does a couple World Supercrosses, gets through 24. Then he goes on a 2-year rampage and then surpasses McGrath and then says, adios, amigos, I'm out of here. You talking about making an absolute exclamation point. We know he doesn't have
be
to
pretty
race anymore.
dominant to catch McGrath.
Not that many more. What is it? It's like 20 something. Doesn't he have 49? No, he's got to have more than that, doesn't
It's
he?
over 50. Yeah, he would have to do like 22, 21.
I mean, if you look at so far this year, it's that pace does not seem so far-fetched. Before it used to be, man, that's 35 races. Who could bridge that gap? Well, holy cow. Now it doesn't look as
I know, but he only
insurmountable as it
won,
used to.
what, 6, maybe 7 races this year?
Yeah, but when you start looking at trying to bridge to that 72 win that McGrath has got, it doesn't seem as insurmountable as it used to be 5 years ago.
True,
I don't know,
true.
Coach.
But you're
I
talking
feel
like
I
he's
feel
gonna-
like Johnny. I feel like it's still insurmountable, especially coming off that injury.
Well, you're
No, I
talking
agree.
like
I'm just
3-4
saying to
years
Pierre's
probably
point.
for him to win that.
But to Pierre's point, though, how cool would it be for him to be able to say, okay, I allowed myself to heal and then just go on another tear? Because like Pierre said, we saw a rejuvenation in Eli that all of us enjoyed. And it was great to see that fire back.
I'll
Well,
say
I
this.
know
It would be awesome to see. And if he does, he passes Ricky as the GOAT, in my opinion. Sorry, Johnny.
Well, I was just going to feed off of that. I would say that as of right now, Eli Tomac is already the greatest well-rounded rider of all time.
Agreed.
If you're talking as versatility goes.
Yeah,
record books.
So the only pushback I have about calling Tomac the GOAT is who has it, and tell me if I'm wrong, and maybe I just don't know. Who else has, if I'm not mistaken, Ricky technically has 3 perfect seasons, or is it just the 2? I'm almost certain it's 3.
2 perfect, 3 if you count don't count motos.
Okay, so there you go, right? Like who is gonna say I've done that, right? Like that's why I always feel like Ricky will be the GOAT until somebody can be like perfect seasons, baby, right?
Pierre, truthfully, if you weren't going off of record books, I would have to say that the greatest of all time is actually Stewart, as somebody that has come in and innovated and the fastest guy on a bike. I would say it's
I would absolutely agree. When it comes to raw absolute speed, coming up with new he really did change the game with scrubs, and nobody had seen those types of techniques before, just from a straight brutal speed standpoint. I would say, yeah, if you're going to stamp somebody that has that, you could say he is the GOAT. I'd rather just call him the fastest man alive and then keep Ricky with the GOAT moniker, just because,
no,
again,
that's fair. That's accurate.
Yeah, it's just so.
Let me ask you this. You guys are historians on this. Remember when James yard darted himself at Vegas? He was on a 2-stroke KX 125.
Yep.
Mhm.
When he went outdoors, did he ever, I apologize, I should know this, but I don't. Did he run a 4-stroke that same summer, or did he run the 125 2-stroke that summer?
He rode a 125 and won every single race he entered. And if
Did
they
he
had
ever
finished the
race?
last,
Did he ever race a 250 4-stroke before he went to the 450?
yes, he raced 1 race at Glen Helen on that bike to prove that he could still ride a 4-stroke.
Did he win?
Oh, of course.
No. Here's the reason why I'm asking, just so that the chat room has full context. Is there anybody that's won on a 2-stroke, a 250 4-stroke, and a 450 4-stroke the way that James did?
That's right. Nobody will ever do that.
Nobody will ever do that. Think about that, because it goes back to like James, or to what Johnny was saying. James, if you're going to look at being able to show, what's the gentleman's name that's so good on all the statistics that RacerX uses? I can't remember what his name is.
Is it Fowler?
Fowler. Can you imagine, to Pierre's point, if you had somebody like him that would say, okay, here's how many laps he raced, here's how many times he crashed, here's his percentage of completion. If you started getting into those number crunching and really started to divide that pie up, number of motos started, number of motos finished, number of motos started, number of motos started but crashed, number of motos started, didn't crash, number of consecutive laps before crash. I'm a numbers geek. I live and die by numbers. That's the kind of stuff I'd love to see, the statistics. When we get into this debate of who's the greatest of all time, you'd have to go and you'd have to run those averages. I would have to stick to Pierre's suggestion: fastest, greatest of all time, 2 different categories, because it's pretty hard. Look at, as the old, probably one of the most controversial questions, who goes on Mount Rushmore? Who do you put those up on?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
That is a tough one.
All right. Well, final question before we end the live show. Who do you guys would say is the best performer of this year in Supercross? You could be 250 or 450.
Oof, you got a lot of meat on the bone.
Mm-hmm.
Overall season or different stages during the season?
I mean, it could be whatever. You could be like, this is the guy that came up and excelled the most. This is the guy that had the most wins.
I'm gonna stick with my original and just say, hey, Barsha was really impressive to me this season. I think that we just saw this change in him, and sure, he wasn't the guy on the top box right? Like he wasn't that guy, but the fact that he just like a light switch changed and he decided to go a different route and go like, hey, I'm going to put this negative stuff beside me. I'm going to stop cleaning people out. I'm going to worry about the race, and it's my race, and I'm going to make it happen. And just seeing that consistency, I really hope that this injury that he has with his shoulder next year, he's able to just amp that up, and maybe we'll see him on the top box more. So my vote is going to be Barsha.
Pierre, who's your worst performing? Who had like the most hype, but then
you don't want to hear that.
No, no, of course. Again, there's no such thing as bad press.
So I was real. Look, I'm not a Honda guy. I've never been a Sexton fan, and so maybe I'm coming at this from the wrong angle. But dude, Sexton was such a non-performer for me. Like
he's the champion.
Dude, but by the like,
if I can non-perform and win a champion against the two of the greatest like that's 4 champions.
Pierre
like
maybe had high expectations for him.
Oh my
I did. That's
did
my thing.
I'm sorry. Anything less than undefeated is a failure for Chase.
No. Here's what it is.
God,
Here's what it
Pierre.
is. Here's what it is. Honestly, and I'm going to be brutally honest, and people are going to hate me for it. The guy's supposed to go to KTM. Okay, I'm a KTM fan. All I have in my garage is KTM and gas. That's what I have. So for me to see a guy win a championship the way he did, without just saying like, I'm putting my foot down, this is my year, I'm going to make it happen. And to have these like crashes and small, like little things happen to me are like, cool, you won a champion. How do you feel about that? Right? Like you didn't come in and like say and make a statement, I am the champion. You said, oh my gosh, this person asked out. Great, I'm the champ. To me, that's just a weird way to win a championship.
I can see it, Pierre. That's what's great about this show is we can have different opinions.
I see your point. I just completely disagree with it.
Yeah, but you can't disagree. But you can't disagree with it, Chris, because if we go back to Fowler's percentages of everything, right? If you're going to look at the most laps led, most overall wins, and who wins the championship, it damn sure would not be Sexton. So you can't just say
but coach, I'm looking at it as you're trying to tell me this guy's disappointing, and it's the fact that he goes out there with that effort. Nobody gives more effort. He has crashed those gnarly crashes, not broke. He's been durable. He's got up. He's salvaged. He hasn't quit on those nights.
All right, Cooksey, who's your best and worst?
He can't quit. He rides for factory Honda. You can't quit.
No, but
plenty of guys do.
Who's your best and worst
for the season?
You're trying to tell me guys don't pull off after they have a big one, coach?
No. I'm saying you're trying to give credit to somebody that got himself up. Well, don't all the top guys get themselves up? And Johnny, I think it was on your video, somebody made a comment that Sexton's 3 championships all came because at the expense of somebody else. I don't know the statistics on that, but Sexton hasn't straight up won a championship yet. That hasn't been because of the way things fell into place. He hasn't earned it, to Pierre's point.
I know, but same thing you could say that with Dungey too. But
they say it all the time. But we'll also argue you got to be in it to win it. So I mean, Dungey doesn't care how he won it. He cashed the big checks.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to interrupt and say that my best performer of the year is actually Sexton, because he's gone from being on the ground all the time to actually winning a bunch of races and taking advantage of the scenario and becoming champion. It was a hard pick between that and Roxon, because you've got the shitty Suzuki that has the kickstart that, regardless of how he perceived himself on the podium, he still was able to do it on some old, newish equipment. And as far as my worst performer, it would have to be Anderson, because I had big expectations for him. And unfortunately, it just seemed like he was just milliseconds off, and it catapulted him into eventually getting hurt.
Yeah. Hey, back to you, Johnny. My best performer was a guy that I didn't even think should be in the series, and I don't know how I couldn't not say it, is Deegan. Like, we're entering the Deegan era. He showed me qualities in him that I didn't think he had. I didn't think he had a maturity. I didn't think he had a racecraft. I didn't think he was durable. These are all the things that I didn't think he had. I didn't think he'd get through the whoops. So I got to go with Deegan. My biggest disappointment, Malcolm Stewart.
Oh, those are actually both of those were really good.
Coach?
You done? Chris, I didn't want to interrupt you.
I'm done. I'm all good. Sorry.
My biggest most impressive is Hunter. To your point, Chris, about getting up and off the ground over and over again, you got to think about Hunter. The only reason why Jet is even here is because of Hunter and his, great performances over in Europe. He comes over here, gets hurt. His brother starts putting some things together. Hunter gets hurt again. Hunter gets sick. He has all kinds of gastrointestinal issues and digestive issues. Then you have that, right? Now his brother goes and wins a championship. Can you imagine being in that household? You're the reason why you came over. Your brother's now surpassed you as the big thing. He's now the marketing darling. He's got fucking donuts out there. He's got all this stuff. And you got to get up every day and you got to swim upstream against your little brother in the same household. And you're the reason why he's here. And now you're referred to as Jet's brother. Fuck me. Are you kidding me? So to me, to see Hunter just continue to pick away, and I think we'll see a domination of him this summer. I think we'll see the true Hunter come out. I don't think, by the way, I do agree with you, Chris. I don't think you're going to see Jet struggle in the 450 class, but I do think that you're going to see Hunter. So for me, if we're looking at percentage of improvement and things he had to, I refer to it as gravitational pull. I feel like Hunter had the most to offset because so much of it was in his own household, inside his own camp, training every week, traveling with him. Your little brother, cocky. He's the golden boy of everything. I have to give it the nod to Hunter. And my biggest disappointment is the pro circuit team. Just to have that much invested and as an entire entity, you had 2 filling guys, all Supercross long. We only saw Joe Shimoda for 2 races. That was the only guy that we were able to see come back. The other guys, they got hurt and never came back. Now I know that's because of calendar and the way and timing, but my heart breaks for PC because can you imagine being Mitch, the amount of R&D dollars that he's got, the trucks rolling, whether PC's paying, or whether Cowie's paying, Monster's paying, everybody. But can you imagine being Mitch Payton? Because this isn't the first time we've had the team decimated, not to at 100%. You guys saw that Instagram picture that was floating around where they had the Cowie picture. You had Anderson and AC, and then they had the pro circuit guys behind him. And then they said, here's the PC team now. And it only had Anderson out front. That pretty much sums up how Mitch Payton's year has been so far.
Coach,
so,
Mitch needs to go into Kawasaki and say, listen, however you're feeding me these guys, stop. Let's try something new. It's not working.
Yeah, well, that's a different story. I can't even imagine what Mitch must be thinking. Can't even imagine.
Johnny, did you have a disappointment?
No, I said it was Anderson.
Oh, okay.
Because I had high expectations for him to come out like he won. I don't know, what was it, 7 of the last rounds last year. Again, there's a lot of people that were injured.
That's a good one.
But I was expecting him to be more on the podium and win some races. But guys, congratulations, Pierre. This is the longest shit show that we have had on the show. We have gone right about 2 hours. So I want to say thank you to everybody that has joined in, and make sure you check out all of these SOBs in the description below. Pierre has an awesome TikTok where he does short form stuff. And then he's also even got a YouTube channel. So make sure you check him out there. Are you guys willing to brop with me?
Always.
All right. So let's keep it WFO. About
Oh, right.